In Pit Lane would like to acknowledge the support of the following sponsors. We thank them for their support of In Pit Lane. Well, it's that time of the year again. It's Motorclassica, and Motorclassica has become one of the biggest and best events of its kind, not just in Australia, but right around the world. Motorclassica is held here at the beautiful Royal Exhibition buildings here in the Carlton Gardens, and it's Friday and there's already thousands of people here taking advantage of some fairly nice weather, and also to have a look at some fabulous cars, both old and new. But rather than just talk about it, why don't we go inside and take a look at some of the great cars and bikes that are out here for this year's Motorclassica.
Don't forget the bikes, they're at Motorclassica here too. I'm here with a 1951 998 Vincent. It holds the land speed record for 1953 at over 140 miles per hour. Jack Errett rode this, and it still to this day holds that record. Magnificent, unrestored, beautiful 998 bike. Rare bikes everywhere here at Motorclassica. Here we have a Rickman Petite 500. Only a few of them made. You don't see too many bikes in this colour, and this was actually a racer in its time. They also did a road version of this, beautifully well turned out, lots of chrome, and yeah, a credit to its owner. Here's a beautiful example of a Peugeot. Most of you know cars, but they also made motorbikes and push bikes back in their time in 1933. This was regarded as a sporting bike back then. Twin exhausts. You can pedal power, so yes, you've still got your bike pedals. Pack rack for the picnic lunch at the back. And here we have an absolute treasure trove bikes here at Motorclassica in 2019. A beautiful example of that is this signed example of an Augusta MV. Only 750 of them made, and what a beautiful example of how a restored bike and classic bikes you'll just don't get every day of the week. It wouldn't be a Motorclassica if there wasn't a few Harleys here either, and this is the pick of the bunch for me. A beautiful 1928 Harley Davidson motorcycle. Just one of the last ones off the production line before they discontinued them for a few years, before the war back in 1929, so it's one of the last ones off the shelf. And what an exquisite colour this is. You don't see them in too many restored conditions and gone to the length that the owner, Jeff Nye, down in Victoria has gone to and put on display. It's registered on comp plates, so it does get out on the road. Great to see one of these beasts still ticking along down the freeways.
Well, one of the most famous names in Australian motorsport during the 1970s was, of course, Bolwell and the famous Nagari, the 351 Ford-engine GT car that terrorised the racetracks of Australia with people like Ross Bond and John Goulet and other people over the years. And now the Bolwell Nagari, one of our most famous sports cars, is back. And Campbell Bolwell, we're here at Motorclassica and you're showing this off to the people and getting a huge response. Tell us about the decision to bring back the Nagari.
It's just passion, I think. It's 50 years too. I mean, it's significant from that point of view.
You're making me feel very old now.
Well, I'm feeling old myself, but the point is that we released the first Nagari in this building right under the dome there exactly 50 years ago. And it was a highlight of the motor show at that year.
I actually remember it.
You remember
yes,
it?
I
I thought you'd be a little boy this high.
Oh, well, I was a little boy that high, but I do remember it.
We had trouble keeping your kids off putting your fingers on it. Never mind. But so yeah, it's a 50-year anniversary, and of course the technology in the Bolwell Group now is vastly different to what it was 50 years ago, and the outcome is we have Australia's next supercar. Maybe it's the only supercar, I don't know, but the point is we've been able to achieve this, which has got some superior elements to it. It's super lightweight, it weighs under a tonne, and yet it's got a V8, 6.2 litre V8 motor, same as the Corvette in it, mid-engined, 6-speed manual, 500 horsepower, thereabouts. So, does it go? I got to tell you, I've driven it. It's pretty horrendous.
Performance is adequate.
It is adequate, I think, is what Rolls-Royce
would say, yes.
I don't know why other people can't do it. We do it.
So, what are the plans for the car going forward? Is it you're hoping to put it into production at some stage?
If we do, we're not ready yet for it. This is a preview. I mean, we haven't released it yet. We've still got some testing we want to do before we're finally ready. When we're totally happy with it, we'll then release it. Whether it goes internationally or not would depend on developing a partnership with someone who's got the means to be able to take it internationally. I think it has a market, definitely a big market. But
well, we seem to be coming into a bit of a golden age for these sort of cars. I mean, we've got the Brabham, which has just been released, and we're talking, of course, the Le Mans now. They're talking about having hypercars, similar, basically, these very limited production, ultra high performance cars.
Yes.
So, do you think as we move to more, sort of our mainstream transportation becomes more, dare I say it, boring, but more ecologically friendly and more practical, that there's going to be a whole new market for people who just want and are prepared to spend the money for cars that are just really, really fun to drive?
Yes, and this is the problem. I mean, the technology on automotive stuff is just advancing so well, self-driving cars, all that sort of thing, but it is boring. Yes. And people who really want the excitement of yesterday, they've got to look at something like this. I mean, I don't know, 0 to 100 in 3 seconds and something of that nature. We're talking some pretty exciting stuff. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, it's a lovely car. I mean, as I said, the Nagari was famous, and prior to that, I mean, you had other cars as well, going back to some of your sports racing cars, and it's fabulous to see the name back. It was an iconic name in Australian motoring and Australian motorsport, and hopefully at some stage we might get the opportunity to see it back on a racetrack one day.
I hope so. The one feature we've got about the whole car, and the thing that we need to remind people of, it's Australian technology. This is Australian innovation. Made here, designed here. It's Australian.
Well, it's an absolutely terrific looking car. Congratulations. We hope that we can see it go to production at some stage in some form. But for now, Campbell Bolwell, thanks for joining us in Pit Lane.
You're very welcome.
You're watching In Pit Lane from Motorclassica 2020. When we come back, we'll be joined by the man behind Motorclassica, Paul Mathers, and coming up, Rauno Aaltonen Bob Holden, winners of Bathurst 1966, celebrating 60 years of the Mini. Don't go away, we'll be right back. Well, it's hard to believe, but it was 10 years ago I stood over there with Paul Mathers to talk about the very first incarnation of Motorclassica, and 10 years later it has been an extraordinary success. The event has now become not just famous here in Melbourne, but right across the world as a major event for the collector's car and vintage and historic car community around the world. Caught up with Paul a little bit earlier on in the day to find out all about the history of Motorclassica and also what they're planning for the next 10 years. And Paul, it seems like only yesterday that we were up on the mezzanine floor looking out over the first Motorclassica and saying, you know, how incredibly successful it all was. Here we are, it's 10 years later. Has this exceeded your expectations?
I never know what to expect, to be honest with you, Brett. I mean, it's my expectations are probably a little bit unrealistic every year. I'm a bit of a perfectionist. Most people that know me would tell you. But I mean, has it excited me? Has it inspired me? Yeah, absolutely. I've mentioned to a few people that, you know, you can look at a list of cars on a spreadsheet, and you can perhaps not be particularly inspired by it. And this year, when I looked at the cars on the spreadsheet, I thought, oh yeah, that'll be okay. You know, we've got a good variety, but there was nothing that was really singing off the page to me that, you know, might strike me as being something that was really particularly special for me. But then you come and you see all the cars in their position, and you see how they fit together as a collection, and you realise that it's actually less about individual cars and more about a curated collection of cars. A bit like going to an art gallery to see an exhibition. You know, it's not about seeing one painting, it's about seeing the collection. And this collection is as good as any other year that we've had. It's really eclectic. You know, we've got, at one end of the spectrum, you've got Bentley and Elvis, and at the other end of the spectrum, you've got Japanese sports cars. And then you've got everything just about in between. So it's a really interesting collection. There's some absolutely beautiful cars there. There's a whole lot that I'd love to have in my garage.
Yes.
And yeah, look, I look around and I think it's a really great show.
Mm-hmm. How has it changed over the years from your initial vision for the show? I mean, when you first came into the studios in Pit Lane and were talking about what was going to happen, and then after the first one, how's it changed over the years?
I think that firstly, as a Concours d'Elegance, I think it's really genuinely become a national Concours d'Elegance. This year, more than 30% of the entries are from interstate. And I think that that's really exciting, because in year one, we probably had a handful of interstate entries. And this year, we've got more cars in the Concours too, because we don't have a car auction. So all those car auction spaces are now Concours cars. So we have more cars than ever before and more interstate entrants. And that's really cool, I think. That's a cool development. I think that as an expo, that part of it, to have the buy-in from some of the more lateral thinking and entrepreneurial OEMs and dealers, I think that that's really great. You know, this year we're celebrating 60 years of Mini, and it's great to have Mini here. We're doing Japanese sports cars. It's great to have Nissan as a sponsor of that. 100 years of Citroën, and it's great to have Citroën. And in fact, Citroën have taken it so seriously, they've brought out their global CEO, Linda Jackson, for the event.
That's pretty amazing when you think about it. I mean, this isn't the CEO of Citroën Australia or Citroën Asia Pacific. This is the big boss.
Yeah,
that's a huge get. How did that all happen?
Well, that's Citroën. You know, they've taken their history and their centenary really, really seriously, and there's a number of events around the world that they're officially celebrating their centenary at, and they've chosen Motorclassica to be their Australian official celebration. And you know, Citroën are known as being innovators. Let's not forget, from an engineering point of view, and certainly, you know, now from a marketing point of view, they're innovative as well, because, you know, Bentley's not here celebrating their centenary, but we've got probably the most important collection of Bentleys in the country here. So I think that it's really exciting that brands like Citroën are forward-thinking enough to realise that here is an audience of people that are really enthusiastic about cars, and they're inspired by what automotive manufacturers are doing with their cars, not only in the past but also in the present and the future.
One thing that has changed over the years, and we've seen the growth of, is what's called Club Sandwich. I mean, tell us how that's grown over the years, and how that all came together, and what are the long-term visions of what you're going to do with that?
Well, Club Sandwich is a really integral part of the event, you know. The club movement here in Australia is really strong. In Victoria, it's particularly strong. And to give clubs a sense of ownership of this event is really, really important to us. The fact that they're outside doesn't diminish what they contribute. In fact, in many ways it enhances, because Club Sandwich in itself is an event. Just like the tour on Thursday is an event in itself. It's quite a logistic exercise getting them all in, and it has its own sponsor, it has its own hospitality, and it's a really special part of Motorclassica. And you know, the clubs that continue to support it, we have a wait list every year of clubs that want to be in, and I think that any club that is in would like to have more cars on display as well. Unfortunately, we're limited by the amount of space that we have, so that's a great area, and this year it's probably the best it's ever been. We've spent a lot of extra money on it this year, and we're broadcasting Bathurst live on the weekend as well. We've got a fantastic wine bar out there by Mitchelton, and it's a lovely area to spend your day, really, amongst some great classic cars.
10 years, I mean, is always an opportunity to sort of, you know, perhaps retool a bit, to think about where you've been and where you're going to go for the next 10 years. Do you see any major changes coming up? I mean, what are the plans for the next 10 years?
So that's a really interesting question to ask, Brett. I think that Motorclassica will keep growing. I think that it's got a momentum behind it that's turned it into one of Australia's great motoring events, and certainly one of Melbourne's great summertime events or springtime events. So I think it continues to grow. I think that people from around Australia that are collecting cars will continue to buy cars and restore cars and unveil them here for judging. I think that the motoring public will continue to appreciate it. It has a very high level of love from the motoring public, and I think we can just expect to see bigger and better things over the next 10 years as we become really, really established on the calendar.
Well, like I said, it was amazing that first year. I said we were just up the top there, looking out over this on the Sunday, and I think I said at the time there, I said this must have exceeded all your expectations. It certainly exceeded mine. We looked down at the packed. It's Friday here at the moment, I mean, and it's very, very early on Friday morning, and there's people just flooding in already. So it has been an incredible success. Congratulations on you and the team putting all this together. It's been great to be able to come and be a part of it every for the last 10 years, and hopefully, well, you know, whether we're here for another 10 years is anybody's guess, but I imagine Motorclassica will be. Paul Mazers, once again, thanks for Motorclassica, and thanks for joining us in Pit Lane.
Thanks, Brett. It's a pleasure. Cheers.
And we're going to take a break on In Pit Lane. When we come back, we're going to have more from right here at Motorclassica.
What's on in Motorsport, brought to you by the Motoring Diary, your must-have guide for all motoring enthusiasts. What's happening this week in local motorsport? Well, our friends at the Car Club of RMIT are running the George Derrick Memorial Rally. It's round 6 of the Victorian Club Rally Series, and it's at Hayfield, about 2 hours east of Melbourne, this Saturday. Or you could head up to Mount Buller for the Targa High Country Tarmac Rally. See some great cars and drivers tackle some of the nation's best driving roads. It starts this Friday and runs all weekend. Or also out east, it's Sunday Speedway at Druin. There's sports sedans, the fabulous wingless sprint cars, standard saloons and more. It's a great day out and affordable family fun. Also this weekend, what was it? There was something, hang on a second. I feel as if I missed something. Oh, damn, what was that? No, I'll have to get back to you. Sorry, I'll have to get back to you on that one. Oh yes, are you following In Pit Lane on social media? Are you? No? Why not? It's easy. Remember to like and subscribe to us on YouTube. The In Pit Lane YouTube channel contains all of our weekly programs plus a whole lot of bonus content. It's easy to follow. Just click on the notification bell and you'll be informed every time we upload something new and wonderful to the channel. Also, you can follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and guess what? We're even on Instagram. And that's just a small selection of what's happening this weekend in local motorsport. Damn, what was that? Oh, there was something on. Dave, do you know what's going to happen this weekend? Something locally. No? Okay, don't worry. Welcome back to In Pit Lane and Motorclassica 2020. Well, this year's Motorclassica also celebrated 60 years of the Mini, and on hand a special guest with the winners of the 1966 Bathurst 500, Rauno Aaltonen and Bob Holden.
We were around, as well as racing, circuit racing with an 1100 1098 Cooper S. I was rallying as well, and the PR man for BMW, for British Motor BMC was Evan Green, who was also a rally driver, but he was the ultimate PR man. And we'd been in a rally anywhere, and at a meal break or something, I'd see Evan, and he'd always be somewhere else, because his job, as soon as he stopped the car, his job was in his mind again. And I'd say to him, "Where are you now, Evan?" He said, "Oh, somewhere or other, whatever, you know." Anyway, this particular day, up at Bathurst in the total rally, a couple of weeks before Bathurst itself, I saw him really in a vein somewhere. I don't know where he was at the time. Anyway, I said, "Evan, where the hell are you right now? What's your problem? You've obviously got one." He said, "Yeah, I have actually." And I said, "What's the problem?" He said, "Well, I've managed to get Castrol to pay the extra money to get Rauno and Timo and Paddy here for the Southern Cross, but I've also got a bit extra out of them to pay for them to run with our team at Bathurst." And I said, "Oh yeah, and what's the problem?" He said, "Well, I can't advertise. There's no advertising at Bathurst in those days." And I said, "Well, why is that a problem?" He said, "Well, we can't advertise." I said, "Bullshit, you don't have to." He said, "What do you mean?" I said, "Just paint the cars the same colour as a Castrol oil can. You won't have to write on them." Oh, well. And that helped, I think, getting it right. But also, the situation there, of course, was that Rauno was the junior member of the works team, the mini team, and I was a very much almost unliked junior member of the Australian team, because the French and Foley, they were racing drivers, racing the best, quickest minis. I was in a toy mini behind them, you know, but not far away. Like, I was always in the top 10 of the touring cars every race meeting, probably 10th, but that didn't matter. I was in the smallest car. But I had a lot of experience in minis, and very, very good friends with Evan Green, which must have helped.
So how many Bathursts have you done of the traditional Bathurst?
Well, up until the V8 started, and I had to stop then for obvious reasons, money, because I don't, people laugh about my little cars, but as I always say, well, I can almost afford a little one. I certainly can't afford a big one. But the Bathurst thing, I've done 34 proper Bathursts and a couple of 6 hours and things like that.
But to come here and a new track, new surroundings, we did not expect to win. But you see, professional motorsport means your goal must be try to win. And then when we won, of course, it was a great experience and a great pleasure.
In terms of your wins over years, obviously that's an important one, but you won so many things, particularly in rallies and all that. What are the highlights of your career? What are the events that you look back at with particular fondness?
Well, Bathurst is one. Then a Rally Monte Carlo victory. And not well known here, but it was very, very big and difficult rally, Spa-Sofia-Liège, which went from Spa in Belgium to Sofia, nearly to Black Sea and back. And there was 1 hour rest in Sofia, 7,000 kilometers. And that's one. And then there are many nice European rallies in championship which I have won. They are all nice, but then I have a specific love for safari in East Africa. I've done it 23 times.
The magic of that, I suppose, especially back in those days, I mean, Africa was at that stage such an exotic and wonderful place. We knew so little about it. Is that something that you still see with the World Rally Championship is going back to Africa? Do you think that that's still the case, that it's still got that special attraction?
It's a difficult question, because the formula of rallying has changed. Early days, safari was, we could start from Tanzania, Dar es Salaam, go through the coast, Mombasa, Nairobi, and then to Uganda, to Kampala, which is more or less in straight line. Today, the WRC, it is going in circles around one place, which means that the typical idea of rallying, which means that you experience different conditions, different areas, different type of roads, it's gone. Now
Well, they seldom even run
you're
at
going the
night
same
now.
area round and round and round. Certainly, it's equally difficult to win, but the experience for the drivers is not as nice.
And I'm afraid that's all the time we have for this week's edition of In Pit Lane. Thanks to everybody at Motorclassica for once again making us feel most welcome, and we look forward to Motorclassica 2020. But right now, on behalf of Craig, Doc Gladigo and myself and all the crew on In Pit Lane, it's time to say thanks for joining us and bye for now.